ra nước, hột vịt lộn, hột vịt sữa, trứng cút lộn, mất sao đây? Mất sao đây?
Welcome to part 2 of the first episode of 7 Million Bikes, a Saigon podcast. I'm still here with J.K. Hobson. In part 1 we talked about his history with the fairly well-known band called Crisis and his experience of the music industry, and we talked a little bit about America and the changing face, especially gentrification. In this part we're going to move on to Vietnam. So J.K. is from New York originally, and then he came to Vietnam on a study abroad program in 2016 on a Fulbright Scholarship. He then went on to co-found Saigon Funny People, where he regularly hosts open mic nights and performs stand-up comedy. He now writes for City Pass Guide, Saigoneer and TaleCity, and has appeared on Vietnamese TV, and somehow manages to find some time to teach English. So the first question is, what do you not do, and where do you find the time?
What do I not do? I don't say no to opportunities, which I really need to sometimes.
Including people asking you to do podcasts.
No, this is cool. This is easy. You know, this is like required very little prep. Yeah, I do stay. I stay busy. It's funny because I kind of got used to it from university. So part of the fast forward after Crisis broke up, I went back to school, and then I was really grinding hard and like really knocked it out of the park. And so I got into like writing a lot because I had to write a lot for my major. And then
And your major was
global studies. It's like the study of globalization. And then when I the first job I got in Saigon, I was hanging out at a party, and I met Brian Letwin, who's the founder of Saigoneer. And we were just hanging out at a party. Turned out he was from New York too. And we were hanging out at my buddy Alvin's house. And we just met and we're just shooting the shit or whatever. I don't think I even knew who he was. And he was like, "Hey, I like the cut of your jib." I always say that he says that when I tell this story. He didn't exactly say that. But he was like,
it's a
"Hey."
very British thing to say.
Is it really? I thought it was so, like,
yeah.
Does they say that there?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
I like the cut of your jib, son.
Very waspy at the least if it's American, right?
Yeah. Which at any rate he didn't really say that, but he was like, "Hey, do you write?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, I write." And then I was all of a sudden I was freelancing for Saigoneer. This was before I even started teaching. So then I got into writing, as a sort of profession. And then I mean that's one cool thing about Saigon is the barriers to entry into any field are very low. Like if you're moderately good at anything and there's a need for it, you can find your way in, So
the opportunities here are huge. I mean, it's one of the fastest, if not the fastest growing economy in the world, right? And
it is.
So everything's brand new here and everything's growing so fast. So yeah, completely. I think the opportunities here are massive, and it's a really exciting time.
Yeah,
I think
sure.
in Vietnam.
Agreed.
And I think if you can get in early and do a really good podcast that no one's ever listened to, it could be huge. Who knows? We'll see what happens.
It's going to be huge. Huge.
So you came to Vietnam for the first time in 2016?
2015.
2015.
My last year of university.
Right. And you came on a Fulbright Scholarship, is that right?
I first came here during my senior year doing a study abroad thing. So I went to Hue to study Vietnamese history and do a research project about contemporary Vietnamese artists and the way that they transform the memory of war through their artwork. So I did that and interviewed a bunch of artists and did this, final presentation kind of thing, and traveled a lot in Vietnam and just fell in love with the place. I was just like, wow, I just love this place. And I wept when I had to go back to the States. So I went back to the States and then applied for the Fulbright Scholarship, which the application was due in like 2 or 3 weeks.
And what exactly is a Fulbright Scholarship?
Fulbright is a program run through the U.S. State Department that sends scholars and teachers to different parts of the world. Scholars to study to do research, and teachers. It's called a ETA, English Teaching Assistant, to underserved communities in, I want to say 158 countries around the world. And so one of the countries that Fulbright's been pretty popular in is Vietnam. So I had already been here. It's like, I want to go back. So I applied for the Fulbright to come back to Vietnam. And then I won the Fulbright. And then after I graduated, like the month after I graduated, was sent to Nay Tho in the Mekong Delta, where I lived for a year teaching at Đại học Tiền Giang, which is a public university in Tiền Giang province of the Mekong Delta.
And so how's your Vietnamese?
Do I know anything Viet một chút?
I understood that, so but I'm not Vietnamese.
Right. Yeah. I have survival Vietnamese, so I can travel on my own and get my basic needs met, places to stay, food, barter, have a bit of a laugh. It's not conversational yet, which I'm still working on it, so.
This is the first episode of a Saigon podcast.
Yeah.
And so people might not know if they don't live in Vietnam. Why are we laughing about not speaking Vietnamese? What's the big challenge of the Vietnamese language?
Oh, everybody is so boring. Everybody says, the tones. I can't do the tones. Because, it's a tonal language. It's got 5 different tones. So it's you've got, up, down, the dot, the nang, which is like a wave, and I guess flat is the one I didn't say yet. So it's 5 tones, and if you don't say stuff right, it can have very comical results. I asked for, what did I ask for? What was it oh God, I asked for one pork. Ended up asking for pussy meat. And I wanted some crab soup. Ended up asking for dick soup. I don't know. Those are the funniest results, But people give up. People just and because especially you live in Saigon, there's so many expats. Especially if you live in D2 Dao Dien, which is very expat friendly district. There's so many foreigners around that you feel like you don't even have to try,
And I'm one of those people, and I hate myself for it. And I think a common thing I speak to a lot of people is nobody really expects to stay here for this long. And I'm one of those people. Came for a short time just to study to be an English teacher. Then stayed a little bit longer, then a little bit longer, and then now that's become nearly 3 years. I'm going to be here for the foreseeable future. I'm already bad at languages, so that's not a good start. Then it's a tonal language, which with a Scottish accent makes it really difficult because we already add all these crazy inflections, or we talk, we have this rhythm to our accent. I tend to make everything a question, but then making it go up, so then that makes the word go up. So when I first came here, I tried to order vegetarian food, and I tried to make it sound like a question, so I said chai, and I later found out that means fire when it goes up. So I was going into a restaurant just saying fire. So... And so I kind of, like you said, I kind of gave up a little bit, almost because I didn't know I was going to stay for this long. But then, like you said as well, there's so many people that speak a decent amount of English here, right? And then you've got Google Translate as well. And so, you do get a bit lazy as an expat. So how much have you learned Vietnamese? Do you take lessons?
So when I was in Fulbright, we had an orientation in Hanoi, and they gave us 2 weeks of intensive language training. And so... although it was so much, it was about 6 hours a day, and with learning a new language, there's a drop off. After a few hours, there's only so much you can learn when you just kind of get burnt out, So we were just stuffing Vietnamese into our heads, and
with a northern accent, I presume.
They were teaching us both the vocabulary of both and the accents of both. Yeah. Fortunately. So they were telling us, okay, because we're all getting placed, about 14 of us, getting placed in different parts of, the north, central, and south.
Well, you're in Hue, and then that's even more different, right?
Well, I was in Hue for the study abroad thing I did when I was still in university. Yeah. So for Fulbright, I was in Tiền Giang, which is the deep south, dirty south, Mekong Delta, fool. So it was everything there is whereas, say... you say "mot hai ba yo," right? Yo, and in the north is zo. You know what I mean? So I'm studied at Dai Hop Tien Yang, right? In the South, we say Tien Yang, and we say that to a Northerner, they go, "Oh, you mean Tien Giang?" You know what I mean? Oh, my favorite place in Vietnam is Ha Giang. No, it's Ha Giang. You know, I think the Northern accent reminds me more of Chinese because there's more Z's in it. You know,
it's closer to China, so I guess it makes sense, right?
Yeah, yeah. So I had that intensive language training, and then after living, so I lived in Mae Tho, which was like literally no other Westerners anywhere. Like I'd see people who were like travelers sometimes, and then I met the first Westerner that actually lived in Mae Tho like 9 months into being there. So it was, you know, I was very much immersed. So eventually started picking it up by listening to it. So I got okay. I still feel like my Vietnamese is not nearly as good as it should be, you know, but I'm staying in the game. I got my Duolingo hooked up. I'm working on a 7-day streak this week, you know, so, you know.
Do they give you that update every time you open it? So it's like, that's quite good. You've done it 7 days.
Yeah, and you can gamble. You say, you win 5 points if you do 7 days straight, you know.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I have no idea what I use these points for, but, yeah, we'll see.
I had a friend, and she came over here, and she'd learned using Rosetta Stone and came to Saigon. I didn't realise until she got to Saigon that Rosetta Stone was exclusively Northern Vietnamese. And nearly everything she learned was not useful.
Really?
She basically couldn't really use much of what she learned because it is quite different, the pronunciation, and some of the words are completely different, right?
Some of the words are different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So after Fulbright, then what happened next?
Well, during Fulbright.
Oh, during Fulbright?
Well, I was here from summer. The program was from summer 2016 to summer 2017, and then in November of 2016. The election happened. Now, leading up to the election, you know, a lot of my friends, my colleagues in Mae Tho, you know, they were sort of abreast of what was happening in the States politically. And they'd ask me, so, you know, what will you do if Donald Trump gets elected? And I would always joke around, oh, well, you better clear off some room on your couch because I'm going to be crashing with you for the next 4 years.
Expecting it was never going to happen.
Right. And then it happened. And it was just so devastating, and at the same time, like, of course.
That's how you felt.
Yeah,
Right.
there was both.
Because I watched the results come in the Gem Centre here in Saigon, and we went there with my wife, who's American, and another bunch of American friends, and it was a big party. Loads of hot dogs. They had the American ambassador there. You know, they had up on the big screens. You know, all the polling, everything said that Hillary Clinton was going to win, the first female president. Really exciting on a number of levels in terms of making history. And then the results came in, and this whole room, massive ballroom, was like in stunned silence, and no one could believe it. And the speech that the American ambassador did was so awkward, I guess, because he just didn't really know. I might have been a female, maybe I can't remember now, but whoever it was speaking, like, they didn't really know what to say.
Ted Osius, yeah.
That's who it was.
He was the ambassador.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, I met him when I was in Fulbright. Before the election happened, and I met the new guy, I forget his name, the Trump-appointed ambassador.
Oh, okay.
Because the Fulbright's like a state-run, you know, so I was like...
State Department?
State Department, yeah. So I was like rubbing elbows with I've been to the consulate's house and stuff.
Yeah.
But, no. And I had plans to join the Foreign Service after Fulbright was done. Like, I was going to use that as a way to make inroads and, you know, work in an embassy or something, you know. And then I was like, I'm not working for these people, you know. And mind you, a lot of the Foreign Service workers are losing their jobs. The ambassador lost his job behind this thing, and I was like, there's no way, because, you know, you work for the Foreign Service. If you work like at the embassy, you can't speak about the way you feel. So it's very funny being at these parties, you know, hanging out with, you know, people who work at the consulate. They're like, yeah, so what's up? They're like, well, you know, it's just, it is what it is, you know, just, not talking about that. You know, it's just it's like Stepford Wives kind of feel. I mean, you know, you get to know people better, and offline people will be more honest, but I just can't.
And so it was specifically that that led to you staying in Vietnam?
Yeah, it was like, I had a girlfriend back in the States and the whole nine. The election happened November 8th. Really, it hit here on November 9th. Morning of November 9th was when it became finalized. And it was the messed up thing is like people in the States were like, oh my God, this is terrible. All right, I'm going to go to bed and wake up tomorrow morning and try to come to grips with this. Where here it was like 11 o'clock in the morning. Mm-hmm. I had the whole day. And then I was in Miton where it was like, people, I was like, yo, this is crazy. And they were like, yeah, that sucks that the person you wanted to win they couldn't relate. They were just like, whatever. You think Americans always think that their politics, the world revolves around their politics. So I really didn't have anybody to even connect with about it, until I came up to Saigon. But, November 10th, I Skyped with my girl. I was like, I'm not coming back. Just, it was tearful. It was, it was brutal. But there's no way. I don't want to be there. I don't want to be there, man. It's like, it's a whole,
There's that thing though, right? Like, you see a lot of this online, like, I'm going to leave the country, And do you know what? There was actually, the day after the election, one of my wife's, like, high school friends or college friends, someone that she wasn't even that close with, messaged her and said, how difficult was it to get residency in New Zealand? Because we're residents of New Zealand and that's our home and that's where we'll go back to if and when we leave Vietnam. How difficult is it? Because I'm fearful for my children right now and for life in America. And she was a person of colour or Latino, something like that. I can't remember exactly, but one of these groups that Trump had ostracised and made fearful. And so that was like brought it home as well. It was like, wow, this is like real. Like she's messaging, reaching out, saying, how do I leave? But then there's the other argument, like, should you stay and fight for change, or should you stay and be part of the solution instead of, running away?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. And that's one that every individual has to make for themselves, I mean, I was already here, so
you didn't run away.
I didn't run away.
Just stayed.
I just stayed. You know what I mean? I was like, life is good here. And, talking to my friends, I got my buddy Brandon Coleman, former visual photographer dude for Saigoneer. It really hit home. He's a buddy of mine. He's a incredibly good human being and great photographer too. We became friends out here. He's African American like myself. And his time in Vietnam came to a close, and he moved back to Atlanta with his fiancée. And I remember when he moved back, he was like my canary, because I was considering, after things died down a bit, like, yeah, maybe I'll go back, maybe whatever.
It's a great but a harsh analogy. He was like your canary.
He's my canary in the gas mine.
If there's anyone listening, if anybody is listening that's maybe under 25, they probably have no idea what that reference is.
So maybe I should explain that. So in the olden days,
which was not that long ago,
they're bringing coal back. So when coal miners would go into coal mines underground, they would bring a canary with them, because if they hit some kind of natural gas that was noxious or toxic, they would have this canary. So if the canary, who was much less resistant to these poisonous gases, died, they would say, oh, we hit something, we got to get out of here. So the canary would be there just so they could know what the air quality was like. So Brandon was my canary. He went back into the coal mine of America, and he went back, and I remember we were messaging maybe a month after he got. I was like, yo, so how is it? And I was 3 words: don't leave Asia.
Wow.
And it was I got it, man. He was like, these people are wilding out. People are really comfortable, and what that means is that people who are racist really it's become very mainstream. Or at least, at that time, and that part of the United States, he's in the South. New York is, I could say it's more progressive. The racism is different. A lot of black people be like, "Oh, I like the Southern racism, but they call you the N-word to your face." I don't really prefer that. I don't know, man. Like, I've just, maybe it's how I've been raised. Like, because I've been to the South and I've dealt with that, and that's not good either. You know what I mean? It's not like I just had one dude in Florida, Jacksonville, Florida, called me boy, and he was younger than me. I was like, what? I was like, no, first of all, I'm older than you. You don't know. And like, I got like really kind of aggressive with the dude. And the funny thing was, he was just more shocked than anything. He had said it like he didn't know he had said anything wrong. He was like, no, I don't know, boy. That's just how we talk down here. Well, I'm not from down here, So, I don't want to.
Would you have said that to a white person?
No, of course not. But there's a lot. But you can go the other way too. Sometimes a white dude will be like, "Hey, brother," and I'm like, "Man, you don't talk like that to white folks. Just call me dude. You don't have to like be all extra about the shit." So,
have you seen the show Atlanta?
Of course,
yeah. And he goes into that a little bit, right? Like the way white people will interact. Yeah. With African Americans and like differently.
Oh yeah, there's the episode. When they go into they go to that party with the like her friend who has the white husband. And he's like doing poetry and all. That's a great show. I love that. Darius is my spirit animal. I love Darius. That's my favorite character like on any show ever. But yeah, so all that is to say, the political climate is... And it wasn't like it was great when I left. Like, a few months before I left, I'd had the cops pull guns on me and point them at my head for having expired registration tags on my car. I'm sitting in my car. These guys, 4 cops coming towards my car. I'm stopped in the parking lot of my school. I just bought this car. Tags are expired. They... put their lights on. I'm like, oh, okay, you know what? It's probably the tags. I just got the car, whatever. And then I'm watching them approach my car with their guns pulled out. My windows are open, and this is the gag, right? One of them's at one window going, keep your hands on the steering wheel. The other one's like, take your keys out of the ignition. And I'm like, this is how you become a hashtag, right? And then I'm thinking, what's the picture that they're going to use on my Facebook when they kill me, right? What picture are they going to use? Be like, they're going to have a picture of me giving the camera the middle finger. Fulbright scholar or whatever. This is the person that, you know what I mean? As I thought that too, I thought, I got a Fulbright scholarship. I'm about to go to Vietnam, and these guys going to wax me? And then that's when I got really chill, and I talked to them. I said, I have to take my hands off of the steering wheel to take my keys out of the ignition. I put on my best job interview voice. They like that. And so I got out of it alive, and they realized that it was my car. They thought that maybe it was stolen. They still impounded it, and I had to pay about $400 to get it out. That's another hustle.
Why is America the way that it is? I used to live there. I'm white. So I haven't experienced this. So it's not the America that I know, but I know it through the media, and it's like, and I know it from friends, and I just don't get it. Because I'm from the UK, and we obviously have racism, like for sure, but we don't have it like that. I don't think anyway. We don't have guns for one, but I just don't think we have the randomly pulling people over like that, guns in your face. You're guilty for everything, like.
Yeah, it's a tradition. It's not new. It's a long.
It is just America is super racist, right? But pretends it's not. Is that fair?
I mean,
not everyone, but
right. In some ways, it's very progressive, but the racism is it's never not been racist. You know what I mean? You got 300 something years of slavery. Like there was slavery way before even it was the United States, right? And then you got like after slavery ends, you got the Jim Crow era where it's not slavery. But you can, if you're black, you can be strung up by people in a town and hung in broad daylight. And they made a whole event out of it. People hang out in the town square and hang you and burn you to death. And people be eating popcorn and shit. You know what I mean? So then there's that, and then there's that lasts for I guess about 70 or 80 years. Probably getting my numbers wrong. And then there's the civil rights era. And then, the final civil rights bill got signed in 1968. That's 4 years before my birthday. You know what I mean? And then there's
50 years ago.
Right. And then there's the 60s and 70s where, the sort of progressive political leadership of blacks and African Americans are incarcerated, killed, and I mean, there's an unbroken legacy of racism in America leading up to the present day. The most recent, that's way more visual now, like since Rodney King and now with the internet, is now that you see that police will kill unarmed black people with impunity. And now it's like very shocking, but that's not new. It's just that everybody's got to...
We can see it now.
Yeah.
But is it changing anything, do you think, now that we can see it? I think there's more outrage, but I don't really see anything changing so much.
So the Black Lives Matter movement has risen out of that, and they're really concerned with changing laws. So now you got body cams, but the problem is, it's like, on one hand, it's raising more awareness because things are on camera, but on the other hand, it's also desensitizing people because it's like, so here's another black dude getting killed by the cops, and you just shake your head and go, tisk, tisk, tisk. That's a shame. You know what I mean? So although recently there was a case there have been a few cases where cops have been going to jail. It's interesting to see what's going to happen with this cop in this female cop in Texas that like broke into this guy's house. Supposedly she thought it was her house and killed him. And turned out, she's like, wrong apartment, and they got film of the aftermath. So awareness is changing. I think a few laws are changing. Things are going maybe in a better direction slightly, but it's really far from where it needs to be.
And so what would it take for you to go back?
Not sure. I mean... It's really hard for me to envision right now, but not necessarily because America is trash, just because things are really good here.
Yeah.
Things are really good here for me.
Yeah, so tell me about that. What's going on in Saigon? And so what, you were in My Tho?
I was in My Tho, yeah.
What brought you up to Saigon then?
I would come on the weekends often. I would either drive up on my bike or I would take a bus up. It's like $3 to take a bus. I'd get an Airbnb or I'd stay in a hostel and just kind of check out what was going on, go to Indica, hang out with other expats, made some friends, had a couple of friends like through Fulbright that were living here. Shout out to Alvin Bowie. And I just really liked it. And so then I decided that's where I would live after the program ended, and then moved up to Saigon, had a job within minutes practically,
And what was that job?
Teaching job, working for ILA as an English teacher.
And what qualifications did you need for that? Because there's a lot right now in Vietnam about kind of cowboy English teachers. I know you're not one of them, but about how people just come over here and they think, a lot of the stereotype is because they're white and because they can speak English that they'll just get a job. So obviously that wasn't the case for you. So how did you get a job as an English teacher?
Being qualified.
Yeah.
Well, I had.
So for anyone thinking of coming to be an English teacher, what's the process for that?
You really, it would behoove you to have a bachelor's degree and a TESOL or a TEFL certificate. If you have a CELTA or a Delta, even better. But really, if you've got a bachelor's degree, I have a bachelor's degree. I took a TEFL course for Fulbright, or a TESOL course rather, online.
Teach English as a second language.
Right. I took an online one. I didn't pay for it, so I didn't get the certificate. All I had to do was send Fulbright like the screenshot that said I finished the course. So I did that.
Legit,
right? But then while I was in My Tho, I took an online TESOL course. I decided to go the other way. And then I paid for that, and I got a certificate. I got it on Groupon. Paid about $40 for it, right? And between that and my experience with Fulbright, I was able to get a job at Eli.
And so, what's life like as an English teacher then in Saigon?
I love it. It really keeps me grounded. It keeps me accountable. I've got to be there at a certain day at a certain time. I have a killer schedule where I work 2 evenings a week. And then pretty much all day on the weekends. So that's really gives me a lot of free time to do the writing that I need to do, for my freelance jobs and for comedy. I'm also doing voiceover work for TaleCity. So, during the day on the weekdays, and I have 3 weeknights off a week as well, I have enough time to do my other stuff. But as an English teacher, it's great. I mean, it's not always easy. Right now, I've got a bunch of good classes. I'm mostly teaching teens. I've taught my youngest student ever was 4. My oldest, 32. So I have a really broad range of ages and learning levels. But I really, as a teacher, especially teaching teens, I feel like I am affecting the growth of the country in a way. I really try to imbue upon my students the idea of themselves as global citizens and try to, just help them see things in a way that they might not be privy to otherwise. So I really do enjoy it. And it's really the bulk of my income. I could really just teach for 20 hours a week, even less than that, and do fine. But that gives me the financial freedom to pursue all these other things, including writing and stand-up comedy.
And part of that is Saigon Funny People, which you're a co-founder of. So how did that come about?
Well, there was a guy named Adam Palmater, also from New York. He was doing a lot of shows here. And he was doing the open mic at Indica. He was doing shows at Heart of Darkness. And so he put me on. I went to see one of his shows, and we were shooting the shit outside one day. And I had been talking to him like, hey, I kind of want to do stand-up. He was like, yeah, that's great. And then one day we were shooting the shit outside of Pew Pew. And he was like, hey, you're funny. You ever think about doing stand-up comedy?
So you hadn't done it before?
I hadn't done it in Saigon yet.
Right.
I had done it twice, once my last year of university.
Oh, that's all. I thought when you came here, you were long-term comic. You've been doing it for a long time.
Oh, no. I literally did it twice. Once, basically on a dare for an anthropology class, and then in L.A., and then once in Riverside, California, right before I moved out here. So I had, kind of funny things that I was thinking about. And then Adam was like, hey, you do stand-up. I was like, well, I've done it before. Yeah, I've been trying to tell you I want to do it. So he invited me to do an open mic. So I wrote 6 minutes and then started doing it at Indica. And then all of a sudden he's putting me on these different shows. And I got invited to do the Vietnam comedy competition that year, that was 2017. Mm-hmm. That one, I think it was Vu Minh Tu and Huy Lê ended up winning the Saigon heat of that one, and then going up to Hanoi for the next part. But that was 2 months after I'd started doing comedy, that all of a sudden I'm in the biggest comedy competition in Vietnam, which is not to pat myself on the back. Again, low barriers to entry for every field you want to get into.
There's only 5 comics. So
right. Yeah, I was 4th,
Oh, well.
Yeah, right. there were about a dozen of us, starting out, and then, they got it down, and now it's, so then Adam ended up getting a really good gig and leaving town. And then, he had kind of brought a bunch of us in, including Angie the Diva, Vu Minh Tu, and Mark Burke, who's other people know him as Phuc. His Vietnamese name is Phuc, who you should actually have him. He's a guy who was born and raised in Saigon, and I don't think he's never left the country, but he speaks, I would say, in a perfect native accent, except he sounds like he's from Boston.
Yeah, he's got an IELTS of 8, right?
He's got an IELTS of 8.
He likes to tell that in his shows, I think.
Yeah, he likes to brag about that. He learned to speak English from listening to Bill Burr's, I would say podcast. He would say podcast. So it was Angie, Tu, Phuc, and myself started Saigon Funny People, to kind of fill the void that Adam Palmater left.
And so what's happening with Saigon Funny People? How's it been going then?
It's going great. Angie's running it. We've got it's great, just bringing in international comics. Still got the open mic in Indica. Just shows popping up. She's got an all-women show called Banshees. We've just
shows
a lot of
every
shows.
night now.
There's
Almost,
shows
which
like
is crazy.
yeah, not just Saigon Funny People. There's
Yeah.
Comedy Saigon. Jeremy, who's like a longtime friend of Saigon Funny People, has got a mic in D7. Tommy Perchinsky's trying to get a mic together. So all
Devin
Gray's got Past Stewart Street. You know, there's like we had the show last night at the open mic in Indica. There's like a show tomorrow. There's 2 shows on Thursday. 3 shows if you count the benefit for Olga that I'm hosting on Thursday. And so yeah, it's just so much comedy, you know, which is like
it too much now, do you think?
Like, is it getting oversaturated?
Yeah. Because we got a city of 10 million people, but maybe like I think there's 100,000 expats.
Right.
I might be wrong on that.
Right, something like that.
Maybe
I
less.
think you're about right.
Yeah. And a lot of those are Korean expats as well.
Right.
So that would bring the number of maybe native English speakers down a bit too. So yeah, do you think it's going to get, or is it saturated?
I'll say this, it's a small scene, and just from my own perspective, I don't like getting up on stage and seeing anyone else in the audience that has seen me do the joke that I'm about to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
and you lock eyes with that person and you're like, oh, you've had this one before.
Yeah, it's a weird feeling. So for me, like, I think the most important thing for me is just to get better at doing it so I have something to offer. I think the temptation is to be like, well, let's just keep, you know, doing shows and, you know, having more and more opportunities for people to come and see comedy, which is great because, you know, the thing is, the other side of that is somebody has a mic. You know, Todd Bruns had a mic in D7 a couple of months ago, and I had just come back from Hue, where I was performing with a few people. I got invited by Keela Rose to do that, and in front of a different audience, then came back here and do this mic in D7, which is like, for anybody who doesn't live in Saigon, D7 is like one of the outlying districts. Like, people that I know in D7 are people who lived in central Saigon for a while and just got over it, and they just wanted to get out and kind of chill. So
like a mini Singapore almost, isn't it?
Right. You know, big Korean community. It's like very recently developed. And so it's like a different audience out there. So if you can get in front of different audiences, I think it's great. And I think that's kind of what's happening. It's like these different mics are happening in different places, you know, but it's up to the comics to really come with stronger and stronger material, you know. So that's kind of where I'm at. So sometimes I take breaks and, you know, I won't go up for like a few weeks because I just want to write different stuff, you know, rather than, you know, just going up and telling the same old joke. And I got some that, you know, that I bring back around. I'll like walk around and look at the audience. Oh, who's here? Oh, okay, they never heard this one. So, you know, yeah.
Yeah, I think my best ever show was up in Hanoi because no one had seen it before, and I had all these jokes I'd used quite a few times, and I knew they worked, and I went up there and I was quite confident, and I think it was, probably my best show. But then you come back here and you go Indica on a Monday night, and it's the same faces, and you're like, oh, I don't really have anything new, but I have everything that I've done before is now better because I practiced it so much.
Yeah.
But I feel really awkward.
I know.
Because you've seen it progress almost from, like, you know, when it wasn't that funny maybe, or maybe I was nervous, to now, like...
No, yeah, your stuff's gotten a lot better, man. We did that show in D7 at Malt South. I think you put that show together, right?
Yeah.
You did quite well that night, man.
That was a good night as well.
Yeah.
I wasn't due to perform that night, and then we had a few people pull out and a few people late, and I was like... That was really helpful. I just decided, I was like, alright, well, I'll go on because... No one else. Well, we did a couple of spots came free, and then the best thing was I just had my hand in my pocket and I had my notes from the last show that I'd done. I was like, oh, so I just kind of quick scan of that, and then just got up and kind of did that, and yeah, that was a good show. So that's probably one of my best as well.
Yeah, it was a fun night too.
Yeah, that was a good night.
Yeah.
So let's move on to the final part of the show, where I'm gonna ask every guest the same questions about Saigon.
Okay.
And we're gonna see the different answers that we get from people. So the first question is, obviously Vietnam is very famous for its food. The food here is absolutely delicious. What are your top 3 Vietnamese foods?
You know, it's funny because there's my favorite foods, like my go-to foods, are like quite simple dishes. Like right now I'm on a mi wang kick, right? I just found a spot in my neighborhood, and it's just like. And the funny thing, I was never into mi wang. Like, I tried it when I first moved to Vietnam, and I was like, oh, it's all right, you know. And then I guess my palate has just changed because I've been just eating so much Vietnamese food. And then I had someone, I was in Hue doing that show, and I was like, oh, this is good. So I found a place right in my neighborhood, so I love that. It's like noodles with, I guess it's cumin or something like that, and chicken.
Entirely sure, yeah. I think it's one of these things, if you get a good one, it's good, right? Because like Vietnamese food is not homogenous. It's not all equal. Like you can have good pho and you can have bad pho.
Right.
But I guess you need to taste a lot of it to know what's good and what's bad.
Yeah, and mi wang is like a central dish. It's not. It's like it's from. I think it's from Da Nang, so it's not like hugely popular in Saigon. Not as like ubiquitous as like pho or something like that. You know. So mi wang, love that. One of my long-standing favorites is bao kha, the beef stew. That's
with the bread.
Yeah, you get it with the bread or the noodles. It's like a thick, robust brown beef stew. There's a place in Phu Nhan, like right by here, where they're only open from like maybe 6 in the morning to about noon. But if you go early, they got the good cuts, and it's just tender cuts of beef, and they got carrot, and peppers, and onions. Oh man, it's so
all right,
good,
I'm going there. That sounds amazing.
yeah.
I'll need to get the address off you. I'll post it in the notes of the
Okay.
podcast if anyone wants to go check it out.
Yeah, it's in a little hem, like up the street.
Nice.
And
that's the other amazing thing about Saigon, right? The hems, the laneways, like there's so much life that you go, like you can live somewhere or drive by somewhere and you use the main street and you just think it's a main street, and then something will take you up a hem or you have a reason to go somewhere, and then you suddenly the life opens up and there's a market and there's food and there's people, and then that's why I love when I come home. I have to drive through the market and it's just, I live in Vietnam. This is amazing.
Yeah, you're so right, man. Sometimes I'll just, like when I move to a new neighborhood, I'll just get lost. I'll just drive through the hems just to see what's around, you know. That's how I found that mi wang place. That's how I found this bao kha place. You know, just try, because I would say of all the business establishments in Saigon, I would say a good 40 to 60% of them is food. There's just restaurants, stands, like, you know, they got tons of Western stuff if that's what you're into, whatever. But there's just food everywhere, man. You know, so yeah, it's a foodie haven, man. So that's so bao kha would be my second, and then third would just be just the bia hoi seafood. Like, just go find a place on the canal here. There's one on Trung Sa, like right on the street where you live, like closer to going towards Binh Thanh, that just sit down there and just have seafood, man. Just all kinds of seafood. Mok Chin Yon, which is like fried squid with like breading on it, with Nuk Mam, like a fish sauce next to it, and just clams and oysters and crab and fried rice and rau mung sao toi, like you get like morning glory with garlic. That's one of my favorites,
rau mung sao toi, for sure.
Man.
And tofu chin sa.
What's that?
Tofu with chili lemongrass.
Oh yeah.
Sorry, my pronunciation is probably terrible.
Tofu chin sa. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's one of my favorites, for
great.
sure. I've not had dinner yet. I'm starving now. I'm so hungry.
You're making ourselves
Let's move
hungry.
on. So Saigon has an unbelievable craft beer scene. If you don't live here, you might not know that. Started off with Pasteur, now we're all the way up to like Heart of Darkness, Winking Seal. And so that's for me, because I'm a big craft beer fan, is one of the best things about Saigon is the quality of the beer here. So what's your favourite bar and your favourite beer in Saigon? And you don't have to choose a craft beer, but if you say something like ba ba ba, we're going to end the podcast now and you can just leave. So what's your favourite bar and your favourite beer?
Favorite beer is Tiger. Oh, I think just for the sake of just Indica has a place in my heart, just because it's one of the first bars, if not the first bar, definitely the first bar I was ever that I ever visited on a regular basis. You know, I always had my birthday there. They just always treated me well. And then never mind, you know, it's my first time going up and doing comedy. Do comedy there, you know.
It's my first time doing comedy was at Indica as well, yeah.
Right, the open mic and the staff. Some of my oldest friends in Saigon are people that I know from Indica, either from hanging out there or people that work there. Sora and An, who doesn't work there anymore. I just like the setup of it. It's in the cut. It's got the outdoor patio. You've got the inside. You know, they've got a bunch of great events and music, and you know, they bring. They're not really big with craft beers. They don't have their own craft beer, but they'll make you.
They got a few though.
Yeah, what's the?
They got Tay and they got Pasteur Street.
Right. They do have Pasteur Street. They have a couple of them. They have like the passion fruit ale.
Platinum, I think, as well.
Platinum as well. Yeah. For craft beer, I got to go with Heart of Darkness, because they just make some beers that are just like, wow. This is like the IPAs. IPAs are just so strong. It's like malt liquor with none of the shame. You know, you feel like you're really. You know, I mean, you pay for it, but like if you have like 2 or 3 of those IPAs, like it's a wrap. Son.
I've seen a friend drink 5 pints of IPA, and it was the drunkest I've ever seen him. He was funny that night. That was a fun night.
If you let somebody drink 5 of those things, you're not a friend. That's just
he's a fast drinker. You don't even know. It wasn't until like the next day I was like, mate, did you drink? He's like 5. I was like, mate. They're like 7.8%.
Yeah, some of them are higher.
Yeah,
I want to say there's a 10.3.
Oh, I'm sure there would be. Yeah.
It's not the Kurtz Same. It's like that other. They got all the double secret stupid dark IPA, whatever
some dark beers that are that strong.
Yeah.
So Saigon changes a lot between the day and the night. What's your favourite daytime place to go for a drink or to hang out in?
There's definitely no shortage of coffee shops. Like during the day, if I'm out, I'm probably not hanging out with anyone. I'm probably finding a coffee shop within which to do writing, So there's like tons of coffee shops in Saigon. I hang out at ID Cafe over there in D3. I'll go to Kong Cafe, which is like a cafe, a chain where they have this great coconut coffee. There's a bunch of little spots. There's a place in Funyan. I don't even know the name of it, but it's basically like a coffee shop built into a miniature jungle. It's just crazy. It almost seems like if each expat in Saigon wanted to have their very own coffee shop to call their own, in terms of being like the only Westerner in there, it could possibly happen.
I think it might, yeah. I think it possibly could. It's insane.
Yeah. On my block, I'm talking about the one stretch of road from corner to corner, I want to say there are 6 coffee shops. I'm like, how are all these places doing business?
And they all do?
And they all do. They're doing great.
And there's more opening all the time.
All the time, So that's like during the day. That's kind of what I like to do, is just find a chill coffee shop, take my laptop, do whatever business I have to do. There's an interesting place that just reopened called City Beer Station, and so you're talking about how Saigon changes from the daytime to the nighttime. City Beer Station in the daytime, it's a coffee shop, but at night it's like a pop-up cocktail, like street cocktail bar. Like, so in Saigon you have these like beer places and food places where you have like these little plastic stools where you sit there and you like eat or drink. And this place, and most of the time they serve bottled beer or beer, fresh beer in a glass. But this place, they make like full on like cocktails. So you get like a $70,000 whiskey, 70,000 dong.
I do that all the time.
Yeah, right. We balling out of control over here, man. $70,000 drinks ain't nothing to us.
Do you know, I went back to the States with my wife, and the first morning we were there, we were discussing money and money we had, that we needed to transfer, and how much we needed to exchange and things like that. And so we're sitting in Texas in a breakfast place, and we're talking about like millions and hundreds of thousands, and like, yeah, we got to transfer 400,000 from this account, we got to exchange 2-3 million, whatever. And then it wasn't until after we were like, we never said dong in that conversation, so people overheard us. They were just like, those guys there are so rich, they must be loaded.
yeah That's the thing. Yeah, you move to Saigon, you're instantly a millionaire.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, so like, just to explain that a little bit, it's 23,000 dong, around that, for every US dollar. So 100,000 dong is roughly like $4-point-something.
Yeah.
So you're just dealing with money in huge increments, and you get sort of desensitized to it for a bit. But these drinks, you get like a whiskey sour for about 70,000 dong, which is like $3.
Yeah, I got to check this place out. I've not been since it reopened, so it's on the list.
It's kind of a floating. It's been in. This is like the third place that it's been at since,
I spent one evening trying to find it, going up laneways and making phone calls, and ended up not finding it and having to just go home.
Yeah, let's hit it up after the interview, man.
That's a good idea. So, one thing I want to ask everybody, because I've been here, as I've mentioned, nearly 3 years. I've had massive ups and downs living in this city, like to the point in the first year where I couldn't wait to leave. Like I was saying to my wife, like, when are we leaving? Like I counting down the days to go back. I wanted to go back to New Zealand. And it's a roller coaster. It's crazy, it's busy, it's energetic, there's air pollution, it's dirty, it's noisy. But I love living here now, and a lot of people do. Why do you stay here?
I think what happens to a lot of people, with whether they realize it or not, is just culture shock. Like, you come and it's new and it's like, oh, this is great, it's awesome. It's like, oh, it's so busy. Oh, look at all these pagodas and then a few months in, you're just hungry for your home food. You want to be able to. I mean, for me, I went through my culture shock living in Metall. So it hit me hard. I got like kind of depressed for a while. And as with most struggles in life, people often give up when it gets tough. There's an old quote from a Buddhist monk from 13th century Japan, Nichiren Daishonin. I'm like misquoting it, but it's like it takes 12 days to get from this one place where he lived to Kamakura. It takes 12 days, and he says, if you give up on that 11th day, you're never going to see the sunset over Kamakura. So a lot of times people don't know exactly how long it takes to overcome that, and they just think, oh, it's always going to be like this, and they leave.
I heard a story of someone was telling me their friend came to Saigon, had a job lined up, and arrived on the Friday and left on the Monday. He was like, can't do it.
Of course, because everything is overwhelming. Mm-hmm. Think about, Neil, like when you first came here and how unfamiliar and crazy things were. And every once in a while now, you might be driving and then you'll arrive at some place that you remember being when you first got here, and you go, wow, this place looks so big and crazy. I remember sitting in this very spot or walking on this very street and just being like, yo, this is totally insane. And now it's like, oh, that's where this is? You start to get oriented. It just takes a while. I've got a joke about, like, I'm not sure if I'm becoming culturally acclimated or if I'm losing my mind, right? Because when I first came here, I couldn't even cross the street. So Saigon traffic, I'm sure you've talked about Saigon traffic a lot. It just doesn't stop. It's just like a constant flow of cars. So when you want to cross the street, you just got to get in there. And the cars go around you. It's like organized chaos. When you first see it, you're like, there's no way I can do that.
Yeah, for sure.
Next thing you know, you realize you just got to get in there.
Last week I walked across the road outside of here with my Vietnamese friend. And she went, Neil, you look so Vietnamese. And I thought she meant the way I looked. And I was like, what do you mean I look Vietnamese? And she went, the way you cross the road, you just walk out and walk across. And I was like, oh, yeah, cool. Like, so different that you just...
Yeah.
So easy now, but then you see the tourists on the first day and they're like...
Yeah.
Which we've been there, right? So
of course.
You don't judge them for it. So what makes you stay then?
I just love it.
Yeah.
I just love it. Have so much leisure time. If I wanted it, if I didn't do all my other freelancing stuff, like I could get by on working 20 hours a week. I haven't cooked a meal, maybe one or two.
I haven't cleaned a toilet in 3 years.
Yeah. I don't even clean my apartment anymore. For like a relatively low amount of money, there's a cleaning lady that comes and cleans my apartment and washes my clothes twice a week. And I'm not rich. I'm not balling out of control. It's just, it's a serviced apartment. Yep. And I eat out all the time. I can go out all the time, and I'm close to all these other countries. So on my time off, I can travel. I've been in like 4 different countries since I've been out here. And you can just travel around in Vietnam, and there's like so many amazing places. It's just just great. It's just great in so many ways. And there's so many other people, even though they're not like me in the sense that we don't come from the same place, but there are other expats that, that are, experiencing the same thing I am. And the local folks, a lot are really amazing. And you have all these crazy and funny interactions. Like, even if you don't understand what you're saying, you just end up laughing. My grab ride over here, we were having a conversation until we hit the wall of my Vietnamese, and then we just cracked up laughing and just continued to ride over here, Not over here, it's over there to get my bike, but another story.
So what would you say is the most misunderstood thing about Saigon?
I guess probably how much growth has taken place here. When I went back the first time, when I was here studying, and I went back to the United States, this young woman from my university, she had heard that I had been to Vietnam. She's Viet Q, meaning she's Vietnamese American, and she's like, yeah, she wanted to get there's this program that the Clintons, Hillary and Bill Clinton, were running, giving grants to students who wanted to start projects, and she wanted to start a project in Vietnam. And so she knew that I had been here, and she'd never been to Vietnam before. She grew up in the States. Her parents were refugees, and she approached me about wanting to start this initiative in Vietnam. And so we met in this library, and I'm like, yeah, okay, well, I can do anything. I'll do anything I can to help. She's like, I want to start this initiative, just bringing food to all the hungry people in Vietnam, because I know it's just so, things are so bad since the communists took over. And I was like, what? When I lived in Vietnam, hanging out with my local friends in Hue, where I lived right before that, we ate like 4 or 5 times a day. We were always eating, it just seemed like, life was what happened in between meals, so there's a misunderstanding just about Vietnam in general, that first of all, as an Americans have not separated the name of the country, Vietnam, from the war, right? So when you say Vietnam, the first thing that comes to their minds is, oh yeah, the horrible things that happened to
when
America.
You get here, it's not even like part of the conversation. Like, you don't notice it. I'm sure there are ramifications that are still happening, but as an expat here in Saigon, I've never really spoken to anyone about the war. You don't see any real relics of it unless you go to the museum about the war. But yeah, I agree, that's a very common thing.
I did see something literally about 300 meters from here, and this is like on a dark note, but right across the river, we're on Trung Sa, on Hoang Sa, right by that Greek restaurant that's there. I saw a woman walking in the street, and she was carrying a baby, and the baby's head was like the size of just a large. It was bigger than a basketball, and it was a baby.
Yeah, I've seen that before. It's encephalitis, I think it's called.
Right, and I'm not sure if it was encephalitis or if it was. I know there's still a lot of environmental degradation from Agent Orange and the different chemicals that the U.S. used against the Vietnamese in the war. But for the most part, yeah, if you try to approach like 99.9% of local Vietnamese people and talk about the war, they're just over. Just like, I understand. Like, I would be tired of the name of my country being associated with this terrible war.
They don't call it the Vietnam War, they call it the American War, right? Yeah.
As well they should.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Because
exactly.
yeah.
I remember I was talking to an American online, and he asked me, did I see a lot of Amerasians? And I kind of knew what he was asking, but I wanted to clarify. I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, do you see a lot of half white, half Vietnamese people from, when the soldiers went over? And, I was like, he isn't meaning to be, but I was like, you're so ignorant. What do you think all the GIs came over and just impregnated everybody, and then 40 years later there's just all these people walking about the streets that are half Asian, half Vietnamese? No, everyone's Vietnamese. I'm sure that did happen, and I'm sure there's a few, but to think that your first thought is about the Vietnam War, and then to think, did our soldiers go over there and impregnate everyone, and now there's all these American, Asian people walking about.
Right.
Is that where your first thought goes to?
Right. I think I mean, I know that it happens, and I have seen people, but the fact that that's the first place, that says more about him than it does about like the actual reality that people are living on the ground. Like this kind of, maybe, I don't know, maybe it's got like some kind of weird fantasy. I will say that the first day I was here, the first day that I was ever in Vietnam, I was in Da Nang, and I saw like a banh mi lady, and she was clearly like half black.
Right.
She was a little older than me, and she was just like, and I looked at her, and we looked at each other in the eyes, and then she just gave me this nod, like, yes, you're seeing what you think you see. I wasn't even sure if she spoke English or not. And I was like, when that was my first day here, I was like, whoa, what is about to happen here? But that said, she was one of the last people of that, category that I saw.
So as I mentioned, Saigon is a crazy place to live, well enjoyable, but I feel like especially for expats, every now and again you just got to get out of town. And it's difficult because it's the big seething metropolis, concrete. It's one of the densest cities in the world. You can drive for an hour in any direction and it still looks like you're in the middle of downtown. Right?
You could drive for an hour downtown and still be in downtown if you're at the wrong time.
So where's your favourite place to get out of town?
My new spot is Vung Tau. It's my new favorite place to visit outside of town. I mean, if I want to go like far, Talat is really lovely, but I really like long motorbike rides, so I've driven a couple of times. It's about 3 hours east of Saigon. It's a beach town. Tons of great food, seafood, especially the seafood out here. The seafood in Vung Tau is like ridiculous stuff I've never seen before. Had mantis shrimp. It looks like an alien. It tastes freaking amazing. It's like a whole animal that's nothing but lobster tail. Bunch of cool bars, and the beach is lovely. You go a little bit further and you get to Mui Ne. But I found a few cool spots. Found one really awesome bar in Vung Tau called Peace and Love. That's got this whole hip-hop theme. They got graffiti everywhere. They got a half pipe for people who skate. A half pipe. It's just ridiculous. So, yeah, Vung Tau is like my new getaway. I've been out there.
And how far a bike ride is that?
It's about 3 hours by bike, 2 hours by bus.
It's by the beach,
town.
right?
Yeah, it's a beach town.
Good place to go to.
Yeah.
So my last question, what advice would you give to someone who's thinking of living here?
I would say just do it. But I wouldn't be as quick to say that. You can do it. You can make it out here. And if you're looking for a job, I don't think it's oversaturated yet. So if you get a degree in a TEFL or a TESOL, it's definitely doable. But with that in mind, and if you have an open mind and an open heart and you're willing to experience new things and try new food and meet new people, and definitely, though, I would say what was told to me by the professor, David Biggs, who brought me out here the first time, was just take all your expectations and throw them shits in the garbage, because they will not serve you. Because there's nothing can prepare you except to be like, just be open and to go with what happens. Say yes to experiences, especially if you are able to make friends with local people and they're like, yo, come to my family's house for Tet, and they kind of want to show you off sometimes. Hey, look at this friend I made. Just do it. Take any opportunity like that. Just, I end up hanging out a lot of times, like at least once every couple of months. The garage guys that work in the garage of ILA where I work at, they throw parties there at least once or twice a month. I don't go every time, but I'm always invited. I'm like strongly encouraged. They get physical with me and like, come on, come hang out with us and eat with us. And those are some of the best times you'll have, just hanging out and eating some great food and laughing at God knows what, but heartily and sincerely. So yeah, just say yes to as many experiences like that as you can. If you come out here, get out of the expat bubble as much as you can. people live up there in D2. And, no shade if you live in D2, but I didn't come all the way out here just to live around other expats. Like, stay your ass at home. I mean, no offense, but you know what I mean?
Yep.
Like, I came here because I want to live in Vietnam. You know what I mean? And, I love my expat friends. Obviously, like, I've got, I feel like somebody trying not to be racist. Some of my best friends are expats. There's nothing wrong with French people at all. But yeah, just expand your boundaries and you will expand your life.
I think that's an amazing piece of advice to give to people thinking about living here. Just embrace it. You really got to throw yourself in. Like we talked about, you got to ride the roller coaster. You're going to have your ups and downs. If it's tough, if you live here and it's tough, stick through it. It's going to get good. It is a crazy city. I still get my frustrations, but yeah, I think it's a pretty awesome place to call home for however long I'm here. So thank you so much, J.K. Hobson. You are the first ever guest on my podcast, 7 Million Bikes, a Saigon podcast. I hope if you're listening that you found that interesting. I hope there's something that you can take away from that. And I hope you can tune in, listen to future episodes. We're going to talk to more and more people who live in Saigon, expats and local people, and talk about similar kind of experiences, what their life is like, why they're here, and we'll get the same kind of tips from the same questions at the end of each episode. So, thank you very much, JK. It's been a pleasure.
Same, dude.
Sữa trứng cút lộn mất sao đây mất sao đây.
Thanks for listening to the first ever episode of 7 Million Bikes, a Saigon podcast. Massive thank you to J.K. Hobson for joining me as my first ever guest. I found that a really interesting conversation, lots of fun as well, so I hope you enjoyed it too. Big thank you to Lewis Wright for helping with the sound and also composing our theme song. Thank you as well to Lei Win for designing the logo, which you can see on our website and Facebook page. I really hope you enjoyed this first episode and that you can tune in for more in the future. I'll be interviewing more Saigoneers, people who live in Saigon, expats and locals, to find out more about their backgrounds and their stories and their thoughts on living in Saigon. In the meantime, please go to iTunes and leave a review. That'll be a massive help so more people can find 7 Million Bikes. And please share this with anyone else you think might enjoy it too on your social media. You can check us out on Facebook or on our website 7millionbikes.com, and if you have any suggestions of someone from Saigon you'd like to hear interviewed, then you can send me a message on Facebook or just email me at 7millionbikes@gmail.com. Thanks again for listening, and I hope you have a great day. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you're like me, you may use your laptop at places where you have to use public Wi-Fi. This opens you up to digital snoopers. It's a massive problem. It can be your internet service provider, or you know who, looking at what you do online, or a cyber criminal trying to steal your bank passwords or credit card info, or even a hacker at the next table trying to steal your sensitive data. These days, it is vital that you keep your data safe. NordVPN keeps all of these snoopers away. It makes your internet activity private, protects you from accessing dangerous websites that are phishing for your data, and lets you enjoy your favorite content securely, even while away from home. And it's easy to use, even I could use it. I've actually been using NordVPN for years now here in Vietnam, and I'm excited to be an affiliate partner with them. I've used NordVPN to watch Netflix, BBC, Disney Plus with ease. And I also know that my information and data are safe from prying eyes, whoever they may be. Join now and you'll get 68% off and 3 months free when you go to my link, nordvpn.com/SMB. Just again, for those hard of hearing, nordvpn.com/SMB. The link is also in the show notes. I know nobody checks them out, but go check that out and you can get the link from wherever you are listening to this podcast. As an affiliate partner, it also means that I will get a small commission when you sign up, but at no extra cost to you. So not only will you be getting a great deal through 7 Million Bikes, you get a great VPN and you'll be supporting 7 Million Bikes podcast.
Stay safe online and enjoy the shows you love. Any questions, just let me know. You know how to get in touch with me. And thanks for listening to this show. Cheers.